sports, a bridge that brings people together. And here in the Commonwealth, it's no different. From the gridiron to the hardwood and beyond, we all have a team we love to talk about. Now for the teams you care about, here's Heartland Sports Live with Trevor Rice.
Yes, it is Heartland Sports Live, and I am Trevor Rice, and you're listening to 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM as well. I want to welcome you along for the ride for yet another hour where we're talking area athletics. I will have coming up later in the program, we will have on the phone line with us the head football coach, Chris Engstrand of the John Hardin Bulldogs. He'll join us in segment 2, talking about their loss to Danville over the weekend and getting set for that Central Hardin matchup this Friday night, which is our Bland and Birdwhistle high school football game of the week, 106.1 ESPN Radio and ESPNKY.com. We'll talk about that matchup and maybe some of the struggles in which John Hardin faced over the weekend. And I will have in segment 3 of today's show, I will have Tim Mattingly, the head football coach of the Central Hardin Bruins, joining us here on the program as well. But I want to welcome you in, buckle up, because we are going to be hanging out for the next, 55 minutes or so, however long it is, as we get you set for not only high school football action going on this Friday night, also college football making its return this past weekend with a couple of games. Now we look forward to Western Kentucky. They're playing Thursday night. We'll talk about their matchup coming up here in a bit. We're going to talk Kentucky football, Louisville football, as college football season's here, people. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Fall might be it's becoming my favorite season because of hoodie weather. Love hoodies. We kind of got a glimpse of fall just a little bit with that cold front that came through on Friday. If you went to an area high school football game, you were feeling it, and it felt fantastic, didn't it? Can we get more of that? Well, maybe in the weeks to come, we will have that. But let's look at the college football season here in the area, as we'll be talking Kentucky, Louisville, Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky, of course, we are affiliates. Thursday night, yes, they're going to be playing the Central Arkansas Bears out of the Southland Conference, and that's a 7:30 p.m. kickoff this Thursday night, and you'll be able to catch all the action here on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM as well. Western, they're going to have some question marks going into this 2019 season. Where are they offensively? Because it seems like over the last couple of years, they have not been near as relevant on the offensive side of the football, something that they were known for when they were winning Conference USA championships back 3, maybe 4 years ago. Where's this team at? Where are we going to see them offensively? Because I feel like that if they can get back to that passing game, obviously passing game, as you know, if you're a fan, opens up the running game, and I feel like the Western Kentucky, before you know it, they're going to be able to compete with any team in Conference USA on the scoreboard. Defensively, where are they? Question marks. Last year, their defense was on the field quite a bit, so we kind of saw them stumble at times with a high-powered offense here, staying on the field more offensively. Will that allow the defense to become a better unit here in 2019? Because after Central Arkansas, the Hilltoppers will play FIU on the road. Then they'll play Louisville on the road. That's a 4 p.m. kickoff on September 14th. They'll play UAB at home, so that'll be a big game. Then they'll play Old Dominion on the road. They'll play Army at home, which is going to be actually a pretty big deal, don't you think? That'll be pretty cool. Especially Anthony Atkins, who, by the way, is going to Army West Point, will be in that game. So we'll get to see him competing. So that'll be pretty neat, right? And I think that might be a game that I actually plan on going to, because that sounds like a heck of a lot of fun. Also, they'll be playing Charlotte later in the year as they get into conference play. Marshall on the road this year. That's always a crapshoot. Florida Atlantic they'll have at home back. That'll be November 2nd. Then Arkansas, Southern Miss, Middle Tennessee to close out the season. So a kind of a brutal schedule if you're looking at that. When you're playing Army, when you're playing Arkansas and Southern Miss in the same season, that's kind of that's a brutal schedule. Plus you have conference opponents like Marshall and Middle Tennessee in there. That is not easy. I'm kind of wondering who made this schedule, because that is not a good one. We'll see how it all goes down. Again, we're your home for the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers here on 106.1 ESPN Radio. Listen this Thursday, like I said, as they will begin things against a team that I feel like they should pretty much run over in the Central Arkansas Bears. Now, Central Arkansas out of the Southland Conference over the years has been one of the top 3 or 4 teams out of that league. But I still think Western on paper, in which you never like to go to paper, but that's all we have to fall on right now, should be better in every phase of the game, I would think. And if they can light up the scoreboard early, Central Arkansas, well, I just don't know if they can keep up with the pace that the Hilltoppers are looking to go for offensively this season. Other teams, let's talk about the Kentucky Wildcats, because their season is going to be relatively smooth, you would think, if you're a Wildcats fan, if you're a part of Big Blue Nation. They start off the season against Toledo, Eastern Michigan. That should be 2 wins off the bat. Then a big one on September 14th. They will host Florida, ranked 8th in the country, a 7 p.m. kickoff. Were you impressed with Florida against Miami this weekend? I don't know if I was. They did nothing that really, I guess you could say. Now, granted, I guess Miami is technically a rivalry, I guess. It is the first week of the college football season, so you might kind of look sluggish coming into that first week of the season. But Florida didn't do anything that impressed me. So I feel like a Saturday night, Kentucky Wildcats at home, Big Blue Nation going to show up in full force, a 7 p.m., it could be loud over in Lexington. That could be an interesting game. I would say if you're looking at here in the first few weeks of the season, you're looking at upset alert. That could be one of those games where you're saying the upset. It just very well could be. Then Kentucky will play Mississippi State later this year. That'll be September 21st. The 28th against South Carolina. As you know, their record against South Carolina has been pretty good here in recent history, even though Carolina fans seem delusional and thinking that Kentucky should be a guaranteed win. Look, your team hasn't been relevant for a long time. You need to focus on one game at a time before you start looking at opponents as free wins. Kentucky then will play Arkansas, another very beatable team. That'll be on October 12th. Then they'll play a tough one on the road in Athens against Georgia. That'll be October 19th. Then they'll play Missouri at home, Tennessee at home. So there's a couple of games right there that I feel like that if things fall the right way, they could very well win those games, or at the very least split those. Then they go on the road against Vanderbilt, a team they should beat. They play Tennessee Martin, second to last week of the season, before getting set up with a November 30th matchup against their rival, the Louisville Cardinals, who, what are they going to look like this season? Because Satterfield is definitely going to take a different approach than what previous coaches at Louisville, Bobby Petrino, who I was discussing things with somebody over the weekend, and I think we both agree that he was trying to get fired from Louisville last year, because, I mean, if he had quit, obviously he wouldn't get the money. So I think he was trying to get fired so he was guaranteed those millions of dollars, however many it was, so that he could get out of there. But I think Satterfield's going to take a different approach. I think the Cardinals will be much more friendly with the media. I think that the team is heading in a positive direction as far as what a more realistic approach to the offense and defense. I feel like there's a lot of optimism, but you should be cautiously optimistic about this case for the fact that you have a new coach, but you got to be realistic with the expectations here in 2019, because you do know that maybe the talent's not going to be there compared to where it has been in years past, and this is a rebuilding process for the Cardinals. So here in year one, and you can even say year two under this new coaching staff for Louisville, it's not going to be an easy transition. But if you can find yourself in that third slot, behind teams like Clemson or maybe Syracuse or somebody, if you can find yourselves there in the maybe 3 or 4 slot in the standings when it comes to talking about the ACC, I think that will make Cardinal fans happy. And beating teams that you should beat as well will also make Cardinals fans happy. So I think this coaching staff will turn this program into a winner once again. We may just have to give it a couple of years before we see the results that I think fans want to see. Trevor Rice with you. It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM. We are also on ESPNKY.com. You can go back and listen to every show on there. Coming up, I will have Tim Mattingly in segment 3 of today's program, head football coach of the Central Hardin Bruins. We'll talk about their matchup with Chris Engstrand as well, who's coming up right after the break. It's Heartland Sports Live, and it's presented by CC Power Sports. Exit 121 just south of the Snyder at Brooks Road off I-65. Get your hands on a new or pre-owned Suzuki ATV, motorcycle, or scooter while the deals are hot. That's CC Power Sports. A short drive up I-65 in Shepherdsville. More Heartland Sports Live is on after this, right after this commercial break, in fact.
Hi, this is Rod Woodson. You're listening to Heartland Sports Live with Trevor Rice on 106.1 ESPN Radio.
Welcome back into Heartland Sports Live. We're talking more area high school football here on the program, and I have on the phone line with me Coach Engstrand of the John Hardin Bulldogs. Now, Coach, a tough one for your kids over the weekend, traveling to Danville, losing 48-14, and that when you knew it was going to be a tough challenge on the road here early in the season. In fact, this first half is kind of brutal for you guys, but you knew that you had challenges ahead of you. You knew you had the kids in place that you felt like you could compete in these games as well. Let's talk about this game over the weekend. 48-14. Obviously, you can take some negatives away, but just from what you observed, is there some positives you can take away from this past weekend as well?
Yeah, there's always something positive that we can take. First and foremost, we came out and we got shell-shocked, I think, right away. Missing a few starters, all excuses aside, they lined up and kicked us in our teeth, and we definitely didn't like it. But with that said, our kids never laid down. They played together the entire game. There wasn't any negativity from that standpoint. And a lot of times when you get tested with adversity that early, you find out pretty quickly what the character of your team is made of. And I was probably most proud of our fans and our kids for the positivity that they had in what was a very, very tough opener for us.
Now, obviously, the first game is always a little bit tougher to plan for because you don't know exactly what the team is going to look like on film, just because of new players starting the new year and such and stuff like that. What did Danville do that maybe threw you guys off or threw you in for a loop in the beginning part of that game?
I think it was just the physicality. We came out flat. It was a later game for us. Obviously the environment was really good for high school football, but we just came out a little flat and played on our heels. And once it started to move, it moved quickly, and we just never really recovered psychologically from that.
Let's move forward to this week because it's our Landon Birdwhistle High School football game of the week. You guys will be taking on Central Hardin, a team that you beat a year ago, and you kind of have that on the back of your mind. So they're going to want to come in and basically get revenge for that. So knowing that those kids that were on that Central roster last year wanting to come in here, well, what are you kind of doing this week as you get your team prepared? What are you trying to clean up as you get set for Central Hardin on Friday?
Well, just, our focus is always on John Hardin. And for us, it was a lot of assignment alignment issues that we hadn't seen up to this point, and just securing tackles defensively. If we can do those things, if we can clean that stuff up a little bit, I think we'll be okay.
Talk about your skill players. How did they look on Saturday, and what do you expect for them this season?
Well, moving forward, we'll have Dom Hodges back as a starter this week. After sitting the Danville game, that will obviously help us out a little bit in the run game. But saw some good things out of Darian Camry carrying the football Friday night or Saturday night against Danville. I was really pleased with his tenacity and just really playing nearly every snap of the ball game. He's in much better shape than I thought he was. And skill-wise, I thought Yuki Reyes had a great game. With it being his first year playing football, we're asking him to do a lot of things, and I thought he responded really well. Keandre Strand had a good game as well. So just keeping those guys in the mix, keeping our guys fresh, is definitely going to help us as we go in, playing arguably one of the largest schools in the state.
Yeah, you're going to play some of the larger teams here early, some 6A competition as well as teams with players that may only play one way. Central, I know, has some players that play both ways. So talk about your defensive unit real quick, because obviously 48 points, but that doesn't exactly tell the whole story. How do you feel about this group moving forward into this Friday's game?
Well, my biggest concern is stopping the run. We gave Danville some short fields due to some special team blunders. And that attributed more so than anything else to what we saw on the scoreboard. But we've got to shore up our tackling. If we can do those things, we get lined up correctly. And we had some guys, in the ball game that hadn't been in too much last year, and even through our scrimmages. If we can get our alignment issues cleaned up and get to the football in an angry mood defensively, we'll get back to playing John Hardin football.
John Hardin, Central Hardin, going on this Friday night. It's our Blandon Birdwhistle High School football game of the week, 7:30 p.m. kickoff, pregame at 7:05. Coach Chris Ingstrand of the John Hardin Bulldogs joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Coach, I always appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing your boys this Friday.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to be on here today. Thank you.
Chris Ingstrand, the head football coach of the John Hardin Bulldogs, joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. A rough outing on Saturday, losing 48-12 or 14, excuse me. But you look at the positives, I guess, even though it doesn't seem like there is many if you're on the losing effort of that. You're back at home this week. You take on Central Hardin, so maybe you can kind of recharge the battery here. And plus, you got to remember, if you're one of these players, these are bigger schools. These are teams that very well could be competing for championships this season that you're taking on here in the first half. For John Hardin, Danville to kick off the season, but also they're going to be playing Central Hardin this week out of 6A. They still have E-Town coming up. They still have Meade County coming up. They still have North Hardin coming up. That's just the first half of their season, people. That is unbelievably brutal. If you are a team in Class 4A like John Hardin has, where they're going to be having players go both ways. And teams like North Hardin, who they don't do that. They have players going one way, their offense or defensively. That's going to be extremely challenging in some of these matchups with that John Hardin's going to have. Even though they beat last year, they beat Central Hardin, and they've beaten Meade County here in recent years, still going to be a really tough challenge moving ahead to try to keep this team going because of all the pieces they lost from a year ago. They've got to rebuild here. They've got to put new pieces in to get this offense going, to keep the defense motivated. And so I knew going into the season John Hardin would be down just a little bit. But if you're a Bulldog fan, you can't necessarily hit the panic button right now because these first 5 games, whereas it wouldn't look good going 0-5, I still feel like this team can compete against teams in their own classification, which they are going to get into district play beginning week 6 of the high school football season. So whereas that still seems forever away and you have a lot of tough opponents ahead of you, you got to take this thing game by game by game. And I think that, if they can put that Danville game behind them this past weekend and just keep looking forward to the next opponent, which is now Central Hardin, maybe some good things will come, and maybe they can sneak in a win here in the first several weeks of the season. But Coach Ingstrand and having their ball club in here a few weeks back, they knew that this first half of the season was going to be brutal. In fact, you look at any team in Class 4A and you see that they're going to be matched up against teams like Danville, teams like Central Hardin, North Hardin, Meade County, and Elizabethtown, who notoriously has been a power out of the 3A classification. I think that you would say that if you can get 1 or 2 victories out of that, you're looking pretty good going into the second half of the season. So if they can get a win, maybe sneak in a win against maybe like an E-Town, like a Meade County, or somebody like that. Now, this weekend, I don't know if we're necessarily going to see a close game on Friday. As much as I would love to say that's going to be true, I think Central is going to have the advantage on many fronts, just for the fact that they're going to have more fresh bodies throughout the game, which is going to be a clear-cut advantage, even though you'd say last year they were going to have that advantage. I just feel like John Hardin last year was just a better overall team compared to what we're going to see this season from the Bulldogs. So I think the fact that Central Hardin is going to be healthier as far as throughout 4 quarters, because they're not going to be working their players as hard. I think they just have the size advantage, and I think, and this sounds very cliche, but it holds true, when you look at the battle in the trenches, I just think that Central Hardin is going to have the advantage there, and I think that's where you look to get going in this game. If you're analyzing it, that's going to be the difference in this Friday night's matchup, and I just feel like the clear-cut advantage for me right now is Central Hardin, even though as a broadcaster, you're hoping that every single game is close. If you're me, you have no dog in this fight, no pun intended, even though John Hardin is the Bulldogs. You have no dog in this fight. You just want a close game. You want the area teams to represent themselves well and have a good showing each and every Friday night when you go and call the games. So from my standpoint, we want the area teams to compete and showcase the talent that they have. But at the same time, we're also realistic in being able to analyze and pick out where teams are better than others, where maybe their weaknesses are. And I feel like Central Hardin this week, not only are they going to have the size advantage, but I also feel like that Central Hardin has that loss from a year ago still on the back of their mind. These seniors, they are out to punch people in the mouth this year. And I feel like that this senior group is definitely on the verge of doing that. And I feel like that it's going to take a lot to stop this unit, because where they had some penalties and some mistakes here in the first week, they're only going to improve and clean that up here in practice and over the next couple of regular season games. So when they get all of this figured out and get rolling here, look out, because Central Hardin is going to be, I think, a dangerous team for a lot of foes this season. And I think on paper and just looking at the raw skill, I think they're going to be better than Meade. It's going to come down, and you'll hear me talk about this later when we have when we talk more North Hardin football as well. But I think we're going to have a big time game later this year. Second to last week of the regular season is going to be North Hardin and Central Hardin, and I just feel like that is going to be the case. E-Town getting a big win, 42-0 over the weekend against Allen County Scottsville. Coach Brown in his 6th season getting off to a strong start. And if you were to go back last year for the E-Town Panthers, I think Coach Brown and that staff, they knew that they let some games slip away, and that there was times where maybe they just didn't match up as decently as they thought against some of the opponents on their schedule. But this year they look better. They look like they're more prepared. This group of players, this group of seniors who has been playing together pretty much ever since middle school, is feeling more confident than ever that they can come out and put up positive results week in and week out. Comes out with a strong win again in week 1, 42-0. Now they have a tough challenge, another Hardin County matchup going on this week. You've heard us talking about John and Central. Well, how about E-Town and North, where out of the last 4 seasons, the winner has been the home team. So last year, North Hardin escaping a close one, and I feel like this one is going to be a tough matchup as well. I think Mark Brown, who, in my opinion, is one of the better coaches, not only in the area, I think he's one of the better ones in the state at making adjustments and getting his team prepared even when things are not going well in half number 1. He gets them ready for half number 2 and has them looking even better than maybe people anticipated them looking. I think that he's going to have a game plan. E-Town's at home, so they have the advantage there. I think having a game plan on how you attack some of these skill players that North Hardin's going to have is going to be interesting, because up front, North Hardin is clearly going to have the advantage on the offensive line and defensive line, especially the defensive end of the football. I feel like just watching them in week 1, the defensive side of the football, I think at times is probably going to carry this team here in the regular season. So you look at that standpoint, he's going to have to move bodies around, and of course, E-Town being 3A, they're going to have a lot of players going both ways, playing offensively and defensively. So they're going to get worn out pretty quickly if they don't take care of business on each possession. So if North Hardin is controlling the clock, if they're controlling and just gaining first down after first down with Lavelle Wright, who surprisingly didn't have as big of a showing against Wagner as maybe I thought he was going to have this past week. But who's to say this team doesn't improve and the running game becomes more of a focal point for the Trojans offense moving forward? E-Town has got to find a way to not only shut him down, but then limit guys like Josh Moore, who's going to be a key go-to receiver on the passing game for the Trojans this year, who has some question marks at the quarterback position. They go from Moore last year, who was a senior, to now they have a sophomore in Coleman who I didn't know much about him going into this first week other than he made smarter decisions. The Trojans, they still had 7 turnovers. 3 of those, I think, were interceptions. So there were some sloppy pass plays at times, but I think it was because of receivers just not looking for the football or being ready for looking for the football at that point when they were running the route. So we're going to see if maybe that North Hardin can clean things up here in practice, and maybe we'll have a more fluid game this Friday night against E-Town at 7:30 p.m. at E-Town High. But I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I think it's going to be close early. I still think that with the size advantage and the fact that North Hardin does not have players going both directions is going to be a big part in how this game turns out, and I still think the advantage goes to North Hardin. I still think, though, that Coach Brown and this E-Town squad, they're going to come in with a game plan, and they're going to punch North Hardin in the mouth early. Now, it's how North Hardin responds is going to be the question, and I think it's going to be fun to see how it goes. We'll keep you updated throughout the game this Friday night when we have John Hardin and Central Hardin at 7:30 p.m. this Friday here on 106.1 ESPN Radio and ESPNKY.com. When we come back, I will have Tim Mattingly, the head football coach of the Central Hardin Bruins. It's Heartland Sports Live. You're listening to 106.1 ESPN Radio and 1400 AM. As we welcome you back into Heartland Sports Live, I have head football coach Tim Mattingly of the Central Hardin Bruins on the phone line with me. The Bruins winning big at home in their debut on Friday night against Davies County, winning 49-10. Coach, a big win for your boys on Friday night, so that feels pretty good going into the weekend.
Yeah, it was good to, it's always good to start your season off with a win and being 1-0, and it was it was an exciting little environment here. Had a good crowd. Weather was perfect, almost like a fall evening with the temperature. So it was awesome. Just an awesome environment, and a lot of fan support. And I just thought it was overall just a good Friday night football game, and we were fortunate enough to make some plays and come out on top.
Obviously, there were some mistakes that you would like to clean up, in particular some false starts, penalties that kind of hurt you guys in the beginning portion of that game. But putting aside those negatives, what did you like from your team on Friday night?
I thought we played with a great effort for 4 quarters. I don't think there was any letdown as far as our effort or just getting after. I thought we got after, with good intensity throughout the whole game from the beginning to the end. And that was our goal going in. You know, with first games, there's typically going to be mistakes just because it's your first real live game. And there's going to be some mistakes. You expect a few penalties, even though we had more than I really like, especially a couple of stupid penalties, which we have to address and fix that. But overall, I just thought our effort was really good. And as long as you give that effort, you know, you've got a chance to win some games.
Assess Chase Elmore's first game back for you guys. He looked He looked comfortable for the most part. He didn't look like he really missed much of a step.
No, he's had he's come back strong. He's stronger. He's put on weight. He's bigger. You know, he sees things really well, and that's only going to improve with more experience. You know, his vision of the field. And it's already good, but I think it's going to be really good. You know, keep a few games down the road. So he played really well, I thought, on both sides of the football, and having him back on defense too is awesome because he's kind of our quarterback out there at free safety. So he helps us tremendously on both sides of the ball.
Tim Mattingly joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Gavin George was our player of the game, and a couple of interceptions, a kickoff return for a touchdown, a long pass play for a touchdown from Chase Elmore. So it was very easy for us to say that he was our player of the game and a big, impactful player for you on Friday night. His confidence when he was in the studio when we interviewed you guys over the summer, does it pretty much spread throughout the locker room and the players around him?
I mean, he's a confident young man. He's got a lot of ability. He's got a lot of potential to be an outstanding football player. And you know, the sky's the limit with him because with his size and athleticism, I mean, he can do great things. I mean, he's 6'4", and he's put on some muscle, and he looks good, and he's really playing with, like you said, a lot of confidence, and he has the ability to do those type of things, you know, every Friday night for us. So we just got to keep trying to find ways to get him the ball. And of course, you know, he finds ways to make plays himself. But like you said, those two interceptions and that kickoff return, you know, he has a knack for being in the right place and having a good nose for the football.
Talk about your defensive unit on Friday night, only allowing 10 points. How did you feel like they played?
You know, we did the old bend but don't break. You know, Davis County was what we consider to be more of a passing team, so we probably really focused in on stopping their passing game, which we did. We held them to under 100 yards passing, and they typically average well over 200 yards passing a night. So overall, it was good. I thought we made some adjustments at halftime, just with a couple little changes here and there, and which slowed their running game was bothering us a little bit in the first half. And not take nothing away from them. They have a really good, solid offensive line. They have a really hard-nosed running back. It hits it really hard, and so they were really getting after us up front. And we made a couple little tweaks with our outside linebackers and DNs, and I really thought we really slowed down their running game as well in the second half and held them to no points in the second half. So I was really pleased with the second half of adjustments we made.
You begin your tour this Friday night, 7:30 p.m., of playing Hardin County schools. John Hardin on the schedule next, and a team that had defeated you last year, so I know your players kind of have that on the back of their mind. What do you expect from John Hardin this Friday night, and how do you look to come out on top?
Well, I mean, from John Hardin, you always expect, it's a rivalry game for one, so rivalry games are tricky. When you say somebody's favored in a rivalry game, you can throw that stuff out the window because it typically doesn't matter. It's usually both teams will elevate their play, and John Hardin's always athletic. They're always going to have good speed, team speed overall, offensively and defensively, and special teams. So we'll have to do a good job of tackling. We'll have to do a good job of maintaining blocks if we expect to go over there and pull out a victory.
Once again, it's our Blandon Birdwhistle High School football game of the week. John Hardin and Central Hardin this Friday night, 7:30 p.m. kickoff, 7:05 with the pregame. Coach Mattingly of the Central Hardin Bruins joining us here on Heartland Sports Live. Coach, I appreciate your time, and we will see your boys on Friday night.
Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate it.
Tim Mattingly, the head football coach of the Central Hardin Bruins on Heartland Sports Live. Thank you to him. Thank you to head coach Chris Ingstrand joining me here last segment, as well as Well, high school football continues this Friday night. Like I said, 7:30 p.m. It'll be the John Hardin Bulldogs, the Central Hardin Bruins going at it. And last year, I guess you could say the Bruins Nation was kind of shocked a little bit for the fact that they had a string of bad luck that happened. We've talked about it. We've kind of hit the hammer on the nail quite a bit on this subject, so we're not going to talk too in-depth about it anymore. But down to a fifth-string quarterback, and just everything that transpired last year for Central Hardin ended up losing to John Hardin. Well, I have a feeling that these Bruins, these seniors, have that on the back of their mind, and they are going to want to bring it to John Hardin, which they looked pretty good. Central Hardin looked pretty dang good against Davies County, in which Bobby Thompson and I called that game on Friday night. Some penalties, some mental mistakes that you heard Coach Mattingly talk about that kind of put them behind the chains or just set them back a little bit. But I think the difference from where this team maybe was a couple of years ago to this year is I think they might slightly be better in the passing game, which Jacob Hobbs, I mean, he didn't do bad, but I think Chase Elmore is going to show that his arm is pretty good. He had a beautiful pass play down the near sideline that went for 47 yards to Gavin George, of which he threw it up there and placed it beautifully right into the midst of Gavin George in stride, and he went the distance from that point forward, getting the touchdown and helping the Bruins to extend the lead. But I think we're going to see more of that this season, and I'm curious how defenses start to approach this Central Hardin passing game, because obviously their first weapon of choice, if you were the quarterback being Chase Elmore, is Gavin George. If you're not going to utilize the run with Deonko Wilkerson and that running attack that Central Hardin is notorious for, when you go to the passing game, when you go to the air, Gavin George is going to be the go-to. And like I said, he had a beast performance over Friday night, I should say. 2 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball. Yes, he does play both ways, people. Plus a kickoff return for a touchdown. So he doing things for the special teams unit, and also had that long pass play for a touchdown. He was a clear-cut favorite to be the player of the game on Friday night, and it was not even close. He's one of those players that he's going to make that big of an impact that if you don't shut him down, he's going to make you pay, and that's exactly what happened on Friday night. And so I would suspect that moving forward, defenses are going to try to eliminate him from the passing game, maybe bring a safety in and try to double team him. Is it going to work? Probably not in some cases, because even if Chase Elmore throws the ball up, he's probably standing a few inches taller than everybody around him anyway, that he'll just go up and just snatch the ball from the sky and catch it anyway, even in double coverage. So I don't know how teams are going to take that approach in trying to limit him or stop him. I don't think you're ever going to stop Gavin George, but you could probably try to limit him and maybe get Central Hardin to try to utilize their run game a little more, which Deonko Wilkerson is he's going to make teams pay this year as well. So a big matchup between John Hardin and Central Hardin going on this Friday. Another big matchup in the area between 2 Hardin County schools, Elizabethtown and North Hardin. And talking with Bobby, in which if you're listening to us over the weekend, you heard him say that the winner of that game the last 4 seasons has been the home team. Well, Elizabethtown back at home this year facing North Hardin. 2 teams coming off of big wins. Now, I don't know how Elizabethtown looked necessarily. I didn't see that game in person. I just know that in the first half, they got up 42-0 and just never looked back. So the second half went pretty quickly considering the fact that it was a running clock situation. What I can tell you is North Hardin and Coach Brent Thompson, they're going to have some things to work on and try to get better at this week in practice, because even though they won big on Saturday night, or Saturday evening, I should say, I'm going to say that between penalties and turnovers, Coach Thompson is going to have some things he's going to discuss with these boys. which is still impressive that we're talking about 48 points, a lot of things the team has to work on, and they still had 7 turnovers. Think about that. North Hardin had 7 turnovers, and we're still able to put up 48 points on Wagner on Saturday. Now, are they going to do that against every team? Probably not. But you look at that whole situation, and you're thinking, man, if we can do that, if you're a North Hardin fan, if we can do that against Wagner and in a game in the first week of the season where you're going to come out and it's going to be kind of rough, just for the fact that everything's not going to be clean. You go from a senior quarterback a year ago, now you're down to a sophomore, somebody who doesn't have the experience at that position, and that there's going to be mistakes that happen and things that you'll have to work on for the weeks ahead. But you got to be pretty excited that you have 7 turnovers, you commit all of the penalties that you did, and you still come away with 48 points in a winning effort up there at Fairdale High School on Saturday evening. So where there's negatives, if you are a Trojans fan, there are positives to go along with that as well. And I would think that you're pretty comfortable in knowing the fact right now, which I saw the rankings. I saw that North Hardin was actually ranked 11th in the state concerning 6A qualifications. So I look for them to actually move up in the polls as the season progresses. And I think there's going to be a big, big showdown coming up later this year. I think it's the second week of the end, or second to last week of the regular season, where it's going to be Central Hardin and North Hardin going at it. And that is going to be a huge game environment, a lot on the line. And I think not only do you have the district title on the line in that game, but I also feel like that you are also going to look to that being almost like a playoff atmosphere in that game. I feel like that both North and Central have a good chance to maybe not run the table, but definitely go into that game maybe with 1 or 2 losses. And there's going to be huge implications come that second to last week of the regular season. So we're going to see how all the season plays out. And of course, we've got a lot of football leading up to that point. We've got all the area Hardin County teams going at it here over the next several weeks. So we'll see where we end up. But I'm just saying, that matchup is looking more and more like a beautiful thing come towards the end of the season. Trevor Rice with you. This is Heartland Sports Live. You can always go back and listen to every show, of course, on my Twitter account, at Radio Trevor Rice, with the Apple Podcast. And you'll see a link there that'll take you to all the previous shows. If there was an interview that you missed, you can go back and listen to it on there. If you want to go and download the show, if you're wanting something to listen to while you're on the go, you have that as an option to go back and listen to every Heartland Sports Live and listen to any interview that maybe you had missed at the moment. Well, that will do it for me on this wet Monday edition of Heartland Sports Live. And, of course, Labor Day weekend going on next weekend, so we will not be doing a show, but a lot to talk about as we'll get you set for kickoff action this Friday night here on 106.1 ESPN Radio. It'll be the John Hardin Bulldogs, the Central Hardin Bruins. They are both going at it. You can catch the kickoff at 7:30 p.m. this Friday. Pre-game action, 7:05. Bobby Thompson, myself, Trevor Rice will have the call. And follow us on social media, on our Twitter page, at ESPN Radio 1061, because we're doing some special things there before the kickoff as well, where this week I'm going to have Bobby actually take the iPad down there, and he'll be on the field. And so kind of like a preview. Yeah, I wouldn't say a preview, but just some extra things that we're going to give you before the game, where we're down on the field, maybe interviewing a coach, showing you what's going on in warm-ups and such. So definitely give us a follow on our Twitter page as well. We're trying to grow that, as we just got over 400 followers on that account. So definitely make sure you're following us there. Again, that's at ESPN Radio 1061 on Twitter. Have a fantastic sports week, and we hope that you join us this Friday. John Hardin, Central Hardin, 7:30 p.m. kickoff here on 106.1 ESPN Radio, also streaming on ESPNKY.com. This is Heartland Sports Live, and we'll talk to you again soon.